Assalamualaikum and greeting everyone. We are from Group 2 with 5 members. We present a topic about Maysir, which is a gambling according to Islamic law. Briefly, our presentation comprises introduction, Al-Quran and prophetic tradition views, Islamic scholars' perspective, and how to identify Maysir in a daily transaction. Not to forget, our group also will explain about gambling issue in Malaysia, causes and effects of gambling, and lastly, the conclusion of the topic. So let's begin. First and foremost, we need to know the idea of Maysir first. Maysir is known as betting something of a material value in hope of gain or enrich oneself, whose result may be determined by chance. Based on the definition, there is no dispute that gambling is strictly forbidden by Islam, whereas the elements of gambling are prohibited and a sinful transaction. One of the elements of gambling is a zero-sum nature. It means that the gain of one participant comes from the loss of another. Besides, gambling also creates enmity between people since it takes wealth from one party and gives it to the another party without legitimate cause. The result of gambling also causes a person to engage in a compulsive behavior and out of control to take risks, engaging again and again in the activities that offers the more profit or a greater loss in a second. Next, let's move on to the Quranic and prophetic tradition views that lead the gambling to its injunction of prohibition. In the Quran, the word Maysir, which refers to gambling, appears 3 times at 3 different places. In a reference to prophetic view, the hadith collector Al-Bayhaqi reported that the Prophet said, "Indeed, God has forbidden wine, gambling, kubah, and every intoxicant is illegal." This is a clearly reference to the backgammon during apostolic era, which the game relies on 2 cubic dice with a number given to every side of each dice. So it is not the dice itself that is a form of gambling, but the purpose for which it is used in a game. Since the throw of a dice is unpredictable, the whole game becomes a game of chance, and such games are gambling. Hence, they are forbidden in Islam. Following in Surah Al-Baqarah verse 219, which means that they ask you Muhammad about wine and gambling. Say, in them is a great sin and yet some benefit for people, but their sin is greater than their benefits. It can be seen that the first injunction concerning prohibition of gambling in the Quran takes place in the stages at the beginning of this verse. This was a preliminary step that designs to prepare the minds of people for the acceptance of the prohibition. The term sins used is a synonym with harm, and we can conclude that what is sinful is harmful and what is harmful is sinful. Thus, gambling is prohibited in Islam.
I will continue presenting the Quran's view, which is from Surah Al-Ma'idah verses 90 and 91. Both of these verses obviously convey an unmistakable prohibition of Maysir, as it depicts the evil of the devil. It adds clarification to the meaning of Maysir by providing an attribute to it that says it causes hatred between people. With the tendency of verse 91, it emphasized the zero-sum character of Maysir transactions in which one party gains and the other losses. Gambling, on the other hand, prevents individuals from praying or remembering Allah because they are busy planning the next enterprise and thinking of methods to earn money with which to gamble. A person in this state is unable to perform anything beneficial or understand what is actually the command of Allah. According to the Quranic interpretation of the word Maysir, all sorts of qimar or gambling are prohibited. This horrible act, which is strongly rejected by Islam as it is always portrayed as destroying numerous families. Moving on to the Islamic scholars' views and opinions, there are various interpretations. First and foremost, gambling is defined by Ibn Hajar al-Makki and al-Mahalli as the possibility of getting luck or loss through a bet. According to Ibn Qudamah and Ibn Qayyim, it is a game in which there is a winner and a loser. According to Ibn Taymiyyah, gambling is when a portion of someone's property is seized and used as a bet. Ibn Kathir's Tafsir and Al-Jassas further explain in Ahkam al-Quran that qimar includes all games with dice and walnuts. According to Malik's view, generally, Maysir is categorized into 2 types. The first one is playful gambling, which involves backgammon, chess, and any other game that leads to carelessness. And the second type is when gambling in the form of betting, which includes anything that a man puts his money or stakes on. despite the fact that there is no element of betting. Malik's point of view implies that any games that result in a careless attitude are a form of gambling in which stakes are placed on possibly harmful or highly offensive events. However, according to Ar-Razi, if an action does not involve betting or leads to any type of sins such as hatred, condemnation or conflict, it is not forbidden and is not concluded in the definition of Maysir or gambling, because gambling distracts people's attention away from Allah. The gambler is either interested in the prospect of winning or angry at the prospect of losing. Then the possession of gamblers used in gambling is prohibited since it involves giving out or taking out money or property. It indicates that gambling only occurs when the property is traded, and that gambling does not occur when the property is not exchanged, despite the fact that it may be illegal for a variety of reasons.
I will be proceeding to present the ways to identify gambling. So, as Muslims, it is very important for us to check the permissibility of our actions in our daily lives. Hence, to determine whether or not an activity that we participate in is considered gambling or not, we must be able to ask ourselves these two questions. So, firstly, does the activity create needed value in the society? And secondly, is the participants risking something of material value in hopes of gains? Going into our first question, which is, does the activity create needed value in society? The reason that this question occurs because the activities which are considered gambling and betting in this present day were not necessarily prohibited back in the days of Rasulullah SAW. And this is according to a hadith which translates to, you should not bet an amount of money except on races of camels, arrows or horses. So in order to understand these points better, we must be able to put ourselves in the shoes of the people in the days of Rasulullah SAW. Rasulullah SAW encouraged people, especially men, to have vast knowledge and skills in these areas: archery, riding horses, riding camels, because these are the activities needed for us to equip ourselves for wars, to protect our deen during that time. Hence, that is why it was permissible back in the days, because it creates a needed value in society. So what about the present day? Is it still permissible? The answer is, though playing archery, riding camels and riding horses are still sunnah, they still have their benefits on our health and some other areas, it does not carry the same weight and benefits during the times of Rasulullah SAW. Hence, it can be considered gambling only if it answers the second question as well. The second question that helps us determine Maysir is the participant risking something of material value in hopes of gain? So we need to go back to the meaning of Maysir, which comes from the word yasir, which means ease. And during the Quranic revelation, it was used to refer to a game which was played, wherein a group of people would buy a camel, they would slaughter it, and then number of arrows with distinct marks on them, put it in mugs, and each person would pick out a mug, and based on the marks and those arrows, they will be determining whether someone would have more of the camel, less of the camel, or maybe none at all. So based on what I told you, we can see that Maysir is when you risk something of material value in hopes of gain, and in this case was their fair share of camels. So let's go back to the example that we had before this. In order to determine if it is really gambling, it is really Maysir and betting, we need to ask the second question: does the participant risk something of material value in hopes of gain? In this case, yes, they do, because in order to bet on those things, they would buy those tickets and place their bets, which usually is money, in hopes of getting more money from the outcome of those races.
Here, we will get into knowing some of the Maysir issues that happen in Malaysia. The first case was recently happened on 27 September 2021. There is an illegal online gambling syndicate that runs since June 2020 that has been raided by police and been crippled. The premises had generated a big income amounting to almost 2.4 million. Under them, there were 7,000 gamblers, 100 ushers and 7 operators. This case is one of the biggest and viral cases that happened in this year. Next, let's step into the next case, which is about 4D. 4D is one of the biggest gambling syndicates that operated in Malaysia. The operation of the illegal syndicate has led to loss 3 billion in tax revenue annually for the government. Until now, it has become a challenge for the authorities to find the mastermind and terminate the syndicate, as here, there are a number of middlemen and runners that are willing to be interrogated by the police and take the bait. In our country, we have 2 acts that can control this activity. which are the Betting Act 1953, the Common Gaming Houses Act 1953, and the most important is Sharia law. So, what are the causes that lead a person to participate in Maysir? First and foremost, the main factor is that they are being influenced by the concept of getting big wins instantly. By gambling, they will get a large amount of money immediately if they win, but they did not realize that they will get a huge loss too if they lost. The high greedy attitude in their soul had obscuring their minds and eyes to not thinking of their future life. Next, gambling is mostly done by a person who has a financial problem. They want to earn enough money to survive and pay their needs without doing work and can only bet their money. But we need to remember that Allah had planned every single possible ways for His servants to survive in life, including a method for obtaining risk. Fun and enjoyment also contribute to the popularity of gambling. Some gamblers want to use gambling as a medium to relieve stress from works, problems, and housework. It already become a habit for them. Besides, the decision to join in gambling may be influenced by the family members itself. Some of the gamblers have grown up with witnessing their parents and relatives doing gambling as their daily lives. Hence, as a children, they tend to follow their parents' way in the future. Last but not least, the culturally valued events that occurred also contribute to the high rate of gambling in this world. For example, we can see that Chinese are races with a high level of gambling participation. This is because it has become one of their norms for a long time ago.
We're presenting about the effects of gambling on individuals as well as society. One of the effects of gambling on individuals is physical as well as mental illness. Individuals who gamble, they know that they spend a lot of money on it, and to have money is not easy because one must work hard to get it, right? If they keep on spending on gambling and if they keep on losing in gambling, this will drive them, to continuously gamble just to get back what they have lost, because once they lose in gambling, the money will not be returned to them, right? And this will cause them to be stressed out, to be depressed, as well as anxious, because they have lost a big amount of money. They keep on doing that, and if they keep losing, right? And these are called mental illness. And when this happens, it will reduce, their productivity in their daily life, such as losing interest in their daily activities, change of appetite, right? Having difficulty to sleep, and having other diseases as well. And this will cause more problem, not only to themselves, but also to their family as well. The second effect of gambling on individuals is committing crimes. Those who gamble, especially the ones who lose in gambling, their properties, their money will be taken away by those who win. And this will create hatred, within themselves. This may lead them to commit crimes such as abuse, such as killing, causing a fight, stealing, cheating, and so forth. And this will create an unhealthy environment in a particular place. And the third effect of gambling on individuals is neglecting the laws of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Individuals who gamble will cause themselves to turn away from the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, ignoring the prohibition, the commandments of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this may lead oneself to having the worst of attitudes and habits, such as wasting time, wasting effort, getting used to laziness, and so forth. And these are the negative effects on individuals who gamble, which will create more burden to themselves unnecessarily and create more serious problems, not only to themselves but to other people around them as well. Now, the effects of gambling on society is that, firstly, the increased rate of unemployment. This is likely due to being unproductive, because gambling itself can make people become, lazy to put effort into achieving something, and interferes with work relations, as it gives distractions to the gamblers that cause difficulty, to focus on their work. Other than that, gambling causes society to face bankruptcy. A large amount of money is spent and used in gambling activities and will not be returned if they lose, as I mentioned before, as well as will add on to their debts because of overdue bills, borrowing money from others, frequent payday loans, and more. And it takes a long period of time, for people to clear the debt. Last but not least, gambling can cause families to break. When a parent is facing gambling addiction, he or she will neglect or abandon the children or child. And if the parents are stressed out or irritated due to gambling, they may angrily, lash out their children. And this behavior doesn't give any justice to the children themselves, because they are innocent, they do nothing wrong, right? In conclusion, gambling is unhealthy for individuals as well as society, as it gives negative impacts physically, mentally, and spiritually. And the rights of human beings are abused due to gambling that causes the gamblers, to take their own risk to have what they want in an unlawful manner. And the Quran also has stated and recognized gambling as a misleading activity and breaks the life of individuals as well as society. When one does not obey the law of his creator, he needs to be prepared for the consequences that he may face.
In conclusion, in this presentation of ours, we have discussed the views on gambling from divine sources and Islamic scholars. ways to identify gambling, the issues that we face here in Malaysia regarding gambling, as well as the causes and effects of gambling. We hope that this was beneficial to all, and that is all from us. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.